Hello there. I've just spent ages learning that. So this is the first instrument in the Advent Calendar collection, which is 25 free instruments that we're going to release on Pianobook over the next month. So do subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the Instagram account in order to keep up to date with every pack when it's released every day. So this is the first instrument in the collection, and the way it works is that you pump the pedals, that feeds air through the organ. So it's like a miniature version of a church pipe organ, and similar to a church pipe organ, we have all these stops which control different pipes within the organ itself. So we've got the lower pipes here, so if I just pull out the principal pipe, then we just have a sort of straight up organ sound, and then the dulcet is a little bit more deeper in tone. And then same at the top here, we've got a celeste and a melodica. And by using these, I can actually pull out all the stops at the same time. And then we can just go back to the quieter stops. So what I've done is I've just gone up in fifths, recorded each stop, put them into a session, and then I've edited them. So right now I'm going to go over to the studio and show you how to turn this into a Kontakt instrument with a basic GUI. Well, welcome back to the studio where I have converted the Harmonium into a Kontakt instrument, and hopefully Fred Poirier is doing a decent sampler version as I speak, so hopefully that's ready for when we upload this video. So I just thought I'd talk through the instrument and the different things that I've done. I did do a 2-hour session of creating this instrument whilst I had the camera rolling, and then I bumped into a massive bug which I couldn't get over, was tearing my hair out. So I thought it's best to just do a quick sort of here's what I did, rather than the 2-hour long video of me making it, which would be quite boring. But let me know if you want something like that in the future anyway. But yeah, here is the antique Harmonium. I've had to make it in Kontakt 6 unfortunately because I couldn't download Kontakt 5 on this computer, so apologies to all the people on a version that's less than 6.7. Hopefully you can use the decent sampler version. But essentially what I've done is split it into the 3 different mic signals, which is we had 2 mics at the front of the Harmonium, 2 Coles at the back, and then we had 2 SM57s just as sort of a trash mic, if you like, by the pedals. And then I've split it into 2 groups. So you've got the Celeste at the top end of the keyboard, diapason at the bottom, and the same with melodica and the dulcet. And then the treble and bass are all of the stops combined in each of those 2 sections. So you really get a feel for the whole instrument here. And I've just slapped a reverb over the top. So let's give it a whirl. So yeah, there you have the just the front microphones. The back just sound a little bit more distant, so there's a bit more of the room there. And the pedals are much more bassier tone because you've got the bass right next to them, and you'll hear a bit more of the foot pedals that push the air into the instrument. So yeah, really creaky. Because each note on the keyboard is an individual sample, what you end up with is those foot pedals in every single sample, which starts to stack up. So I have actually noise reduced the other samples to reduce that pedal noise. But if you do like creaky pedals, then you've got the option there to add it in. And then let's just solo the different sections. So the Celeste and diapason. So very soft, and compare that to the melodica and dulcet. So a little bit more honky, sort of an in-between of the treble and the bass. So if I just combine those both together. So So I've connected the treble and the bass to the mod wheel here, and essentially that acts as the same way as there's these foot levers which you can sort of stretch out in order to open out all of the stops. So you'll see in my mini performance of In the Bleak with Winter, I pull those open and you can get more of an open tone. So that's sort of how the mod wheel works. Sort of like Spitfire's aperture in a way. So the other thing I recorded was the swells. I know some people might not like creaky pedal noises in their compositions, so I've basically just created a swells patch which just gives you the sound of the organ but without creaky pedals in the background. Now I ran out of time a little bit, so we just have treble and bass in this one, but that just sort of gives you a good idea of what the instrument sounds like without the pedals. So what you can also do with this swells patch is if we just pull open Logic standard reverb here, and then just set this to something silly like 15 seconds, and then let's just shape the attack of it. We can just make a nice little pad sound. So there you go. If you don't want to hang around and see me break down how I made the instruments, that's absolutely fine. You can now go to pianobook.co.uk and download the Antique Harmonium and follow our Instagram as well to have daily updates of our advent calendars as they drop on the different days. We've got some really exciting packs ahead of us, so I'm really looking forward to dropping those on the different days. So let's just go back into Kontakt. And if I click on the wrench icon here, we can sort of see what I've done. And if I just go on expert view, we've got the different groups here. So the way I've broken this up is we've got Celeste and Diapason and all of those groups here, different round robins and the different mic signals there. And then melodic and dulcet, again, same thing. And then the treble and the bass here. So what this means is that if I just set the edit flag to these different groups, you can see that the important part here, after I've mapped them, is that these are all connected to different buses here. And that means that we can separate out the different microphones into the interface. So I recorded each note in a fifth, and so I've dropped the notes in and then dragged them down by a fifth in order to cover the entire keyboard, apart from the top note, which is F. But if you want to, you can just highlight all of the notes here and drag them up in order to extend the range. So after mapping, one of the most important things to do with this instrument is to make sure each note loops so you can hold it down for an infinite amount of time. So to do that, I recorded each note at exactly 100 BPM, and then all I need to do is just activate the loop option here, create a nice crossfade in between so that the crossover between the loop isn't harsh. Then if I activate the grid here, change it to 100 BPM, change this down a little bit so that we're in time, and then I can then set the loop to happen exactly at the end of the bar here. So then what that means is that there's a perfect crossfade and perfect loop on every note and everything matches. So when I've set that for one note, it's then set for the others by selecting this cog icon to all selected zones and copy current zone's loop settings. Press OK, and depending on how big your patch is, it may take a while, so this looks like it's now frozen Kontakt.
A few moments later.
So we'll just take a quick look at the script now, and this is a really basic Kontakt script that just gets you from A to B very easily. I'm sure there's something I've done wrong here, and if there is, do feel free to comment down below. Just before I get into talking about the script, I was editing this and realised I said nothing about how to actually make the wallpaper. So ordinarily I would use Photoshop, but I've in the past used this free software called Canva, and you can create a design here by clicking this button, custom size. The maximum width in Kontakt I believe is 633 pixels, so I might be wrong. And then the height I've used for this project is 350, but for some reason the height does vary between Canva and what it actually is in Kontakt, so that always go a bit higher than you think is my advice. So I've used 350 there, but I think in the actual instrument I've used 250 pixels. And then essentially what Canva gives you is all of these elements, shapes that you can play with. So you can sort of stretch these out if you just want a solid colour background like so. Or you can make different sort of stripe layers, or if you're just uploading an image of the instrument itself, you've got that option too. Or I've just made this texture which I found from a royalty-free image which I found online. Super important that all the images that you use in your Kontakt instrument are either created by yourself or are royalty-free, especially if you're uploading them to Pianobook, and especially if you're turning this into a commercial instrument for yourself. So the last thing is just this text icon here, and you can add in the text here. And then you can change this by clicking the top section here, where you've got different sort of availability for different texts, but I went with this one in the end just because I wanted to kind of replicate the text that was on the original instrument. I can just open up the original design, so you can see that I've got the title of the instrument here. You don't have to put this because you do obviously have the title in the Kontakt window here, which is why I've left a bit of space for that top bar in Kontakt. But I always like to put the name of the instrument on the interface, so it's got some sort of branding, and then I've used the same font to label all the controls, and I've just left a small gap in between each of these so that I can fit the knob that I have to control each of the parameters in between. The last thing I did, just because the swells has a slightly different design, all I did was just copied over this design using this button here, and then you can see below here I've just given it a different name and then just put the controls that I needed, trying to keep them in the same space, which makes scripting the controls onto the interface a little bit easier later on. So if we just go over to Kontakt here, you can see it's currently a blank interface. It's just because I've removed all of the stuff that I've done previously just for the purposes of this tutorial. The way to add the resource container is to click on instrument options here, and then if you're just starting off from fresh, you can create a new container here like so. It's going to want to take you to the default location for Kontakt. You definitely do not want to store your resource files here, because it means when you upload them to Pianobook or wherever, whoever downloads it isn't going to get the resource files within your library, and it's going to look like a blank interface I can see at the moment. So if I just go to my Harmonium folder, then I can create the NKR resource file here. Best to just rename this with the instrument name, spelled correctly, so you know exactly what instrument is located for which resource file. But I've already created a resource container for this project, so if I just go and search for the folder, and then I've stored the resource container in my sample folder here. So that's just right at the bottom there. So it's a .nkr file. You select open, and that's going to bring back all of the knobs that we had on the interface. You can barely see them, but there they are. So to import the background, you can either do this via the script, or you can just add the instrument wallpaper here. So if I just press the search button here, go back down to my resource folder, select pictures, and this is where I've stored the pictures. You'll also see that I've got the knob there and the text file that you need for the knob to work. So super important that that's there. And then there's the icon that I've got in the top left corner that I've put into the script. So I've got my antique Harmonium wallpaper. I can now select close. You'll see that the wallpaper is now in place. And if I just show you where I've put that PB icon in the script, there it is right there. And then the arc knob is the knob that we've used, also in that picture folder that you saw previously. So back to me in the studio now to talk about this script. So we start our script with just the basic stuff, such as how big the actual interface is, so the height and width for that in pixels. And then we also have the Pianobook icon, which I've added in the corner here. So I've just said that in the script to set control, and then the icon there. So the next bit here, so the next blocks here are essentially controlling the parameters for each knob. So this is a Celeste one here, and this goes from 1 to 600,000. That's essentially in this case how much volume the knob is going to go to. So if I change this to the maximum, which is 1 million, which I wouldn't recommend, I can then just copy the script back in, apply it, and you'll see there that my knob has then gone from maximum to then halfway, which is 600,000. So that I can pull this all the way up now, but it would be pretty loud. So it's always best to set these to a low figure to begin with, maybe 500,000, so that they're at half volume. So we go back to Sublime Text, and I'll just change that back to 600,000. So essentially that's what each block here is doing, and I'll leave the script open in the back end if you want to dive into this yourself if you're also a Kontakt creator. So the last bit here in the block is just what knob I'm using. So I've created my own here, and then this last section here just controls how loose or tight that is. So I've set it to -1,000, so they're pretty loose at the moment, but you can make that firmer if you want. But you can make that slightly firmer by using a lower number here, and then you can change the direction of the knob by having either a plus or a negative value. So if we just skip along, I also just have a different section here for all of my move controls. So these move the knobs along the interface. And I've set these here with the different pixel height and lengths of where the center of that knob is. And then just the microphones here, again, exactly the same script for each knob. They're not different. Where that section is different is just down below here. So exactly the same script, the type of knob I've used, and exactly the same resistance there as well. So the difficulty that we have with this particular instrument is that both sets of knobs are doing the same thing. They want to control the volume of the thing they represent. So we've got our microphones and we've got the different stops on the organ. So we want a way of controlling the loudness of the stops whilst also independently controlling what microphones we want to use. So in order to achieve that, I've set them into bus lanes. So each of the stops has been bussed, and then I've also got individual engine power volume parameters for the individual microphones. So just to say that the buses here, they start from 0, even though I've selected bus 1. And if we have a look what that looks like in Kontakt, so if we just set the edit flag for the Celeste and Diapason group, you'll be able to see that these are all connected to bus 1. And then the same for the melodica and dulciet group, they're going into bus 2. And then at the end, we've got the treble and bass group, which is going into bus 3. So those are split into the different buses here. And then I've just got engine power volume for each individual group. So depending on what the group ID here is, depends on sort of what I've selected here in the code. And that's pretty much it. The last thing that we just have is a reverb, which is a send effect that's then plugged in at the end here. And essentially that's just controlling the level of the send. So what that means is because we've got all our complicated routing, if we turn all of the knobs down to 0 for the different stops, we don't hear anything. And the same if we turn up one of the knobs for the stops, but don't have anything in the microphones, we don't hear anything either. But we can now individually control the different microphones with the different stops. And this is the beauty of sampling, because when I'm playing the instrument itself, I can only turn those stops on and off. Whereas now that I've converted it into a sample instrument, it might not be the same quality that you would get with a live performance, but you can now blend in those different stops, which just gives you more options. So I hope you've enjoyed that mini tutorial. If you'd like to see more things like this, let us know in the comments. Just let us know in the comments anyway what you'd like to see from this channel, whether that's sort of diving into Kontakt a bit more, having a look at Decent Sampler, or just general sampling antics. We're really looking forward to creating more content in the new year, and we'll have another Pianobook highlights later in the month. We're just running a bit behind with all of that stuff at the moment, just because of how busy November is generally for the sampling community. So yeah, thanks for joining me. Subscribe and like to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you again next time.